She was just a poor maid, living in the shadows of wealth, until one shocking proposal turned her world upside down. A millionaire's secret, a mother's curse, and a daughter caught between love and betrayal. This is not just a story, it is a lesson written in tears. Welcome to African Tales by Sanan, where true emotions meet timeless African stories. Tell us in the comments where and when you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales that touch the heart and stir the soul. A simple maid rejected a rich suitor, only to discover his secret later. The cock's crow echoed across the clay houses as dawn crept slowly into the village. The air carried the smell of wet earth, wood smoke, and the faint crackle of akara frying in iron pans. From a narrow mud brick home at the edge of the settlement, a young woman named Adunni stirred from her mat. She tied her faded wrapper tightly around her waist and pulled a scarf over her braided hair. Her lips moved in quiet prayer, words as old as her people. Adunni, whispering, Olodumare, bless the works of my hands today. Give me strength to walk, courage to endure, and peace to bring home to my mother. She stepped softly toward the corner where her mother lay. The room smelled faintly of herbs, sweat, and the sharp tang of sickness. Morenik, her mother, breathed heavily on a bamboo mat, her face lined by years of grief. A calabash bowl with yesterday's pap still sat untouched beside her. Aduno knelt, lifted a small gourd of water, and held it to her mother's lips. Adune, Mama, take a little. It will soothe your throat. But Morenaki turned her face away, her words bitter as cola. Morenaki, water cannot sweeten a bitter mouth. What is the use of drinking when life itself is dry? Aduni swallowed hard. She had long grown used to such answers. Her mother was once beautiful, radiant as the morning sun. But betrayal had carved deep furrows into her heart. Morenaki had been loved, abandoned, and left with a child to raise alone. The wound had never healed, only hardened into a distrust of wealth and men. Morenaki, coughing, voice sharp, Child, remember what I tell you. Do not trust silk, do not trust gold. Wealth is only a mask, and behind it hides sorrow. A poor man's honesty is worth more than a rich man's promise. Aduni nodded, as she always did. These words were woven into her very bones. Yet she also knew her mother's medicine, her food, and even the roof over their heads depended on the coins she earned. She rose, placed a calabash of herbs near her mother, and whispered, Aduni, I will return by sunset, Mama. Rest until then. May the ancestors keep you. She stepped out into the dusty street, where children chased a ragged football and market women balanced baskets on their heads. Her feet carried her along the road leading to the wealthier quarters of the town, where the Oladipo mansion stood. The Oladipo home was a palace of red brick and carved wood. Its gates bore the family's crest, a lion carved into brass. The courtyard was wide, lined with hibiscus flowers, and a shrine to the ancestors where kola nuts and palm wine were offered. Inside, servants hurried along tiled floors, carrying baskets of fruit, pots of agusi, and folded adir cloth. Here, in this world of plenty, Aduni worked. Her duty was to care for Mama Ireti, the old matriarch of the Oladipo family. The grandmother was frail, her legs weak and her eyes clouded by time. Doctors had prescribed medicines, but what the old woman truly needed was patience, gentle care, and a companion to ease the slow passage of her days. When Aduni entered the room that morning, she dropped to one knee respectfully, as custom demanded. Aduni, Ekaro, Mama Ireti, good morning. Did you sleep well? The old woman smiled faintly. Mama Ireti, ah, my daughter, your voice is the best medicine of all. My bones may ache, but when you enter, my spirit lifts. Your hands carry patience like calabashes carry water, steady, never spilling. Aduni warmed palm oil and massaged the old woman's legs. She brewed bitter leaf tea and hummed low songs that her mother once sang before sorrow silenced her voice. The other servants noticed. Some had come and gone, careless with duties, whispering behind doors. But Aduni worked as though heaven itself watched. Even Kunle, the old driver who had served the family for decades, remarked Kunla to the cook. This girl is not like the others. She does not steal sugar or hide meat in cloth. Her eyes do not wander where they should not. She works with discipline. Mark my words, her name will be remembered. And so her days passed, each alike, rising before dawn, carrying care on her shoulders, and returning home with her small wages to feed her mother. But fate is a hunter that strikes when least expected. One evening, as Aduni left Mama Iredi's room, she came face to face with Adewale Oladipo, the young heir of the family. He had just returned from travels abroad. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in fine agbada, embroidered with gold threads. His eyes were keen, his bearing calm, the kind of man who could silence a room simply by entering it. Aduni bowed her head quickly, ready to pass in silence. But Adewale paused. His eyes fell first on the tray she carried, simple porridge and soup for the old woman, and then on her face, lined not by age but by responsibility. Adewale, gently, Ekaro, Aduni, I hear much about you. Thank you for the way you attend to my grandmother. She speaks only praise of you. Aduni nearly stumbled at his words. Rarely did masters address servants by name, much less thank them. She lowered her gaze quickly. Aduni, quietly, It is my duty, sir. I only do what I can. Adewale, nodding. Duty is one thing, care is another. You give both. May your hands never tire. He walked on, leaving Aduni frozen in the hallway, her heart strangely unsettled. That evening, when she returned home, her mother noticed her silence. Moreniki, why do you look like you swallowed a strange seed? What has happened? Aduni, hesitant. Nothing, Mama. Only, the young master of the house greeted me today. Morenaki's face darkened at once. Morenaki, be careful, child. When the rich greet you, it is not to honor you. It is to mark you. Do not let their fine words turn your head. Remember your place. You are a maid, not a queen. Aduni bowed her head, biting her tongue. She knew her mother spoke from scars, but still the words stung. That night, as drums echoed from distant compounds and the air filled with the scent of roasting maize, Aduni lay awake. She remembered Mama Iredi's gentle voice. Your hands carry patience like calabashes carry water. And she remembered Adewale's words, May your hands never tire. Her heart fluttered with feelings she dared not name. She turned on her mat and pulled the ragged cloth over her face, hiding a small smile from the night. The next morning dawned brighter, the sun scattering gold across the sky. Aduni walked the road again, carrying her duties like a calabash on her head. Yet something within her had shifted. She could not explain it, but she felt seen, not as a servant, not as a poor girl, but as herself. And though her mother's warnings echoed loudly, a whisper inside her asked, what if not all wealth hides sorrow? What if kindness could be true? For the first time, she allowed the question to live in her heart. The following days returned to their rhythm, yet something invisible had entered Aduni's world. She still woke before dawn, still carried the same calabash of hope, still whispered prayers to Olodumare under her breath. But her heart now beat to an unfamiliar drum. When she reached the Oladipo household, The gate swung open with the usual creak. Servants hurried with trays of fruit and bolts of fabric. Voices of traders outside the gate shouted the price of yams, pepper, and goat meat. Inside, the courtyard bustled with the smells of wealth. Fresh flowers, roasted chicken, foreign perfumes brought from abroad. Yet, despite all this grandeur, Aduni's steps remained steady, her gaze humble. She greeted the guards respectfully, bowed her head to the elder cooks, and moved quietly toward Mama Areti's quarters. Mama Areti welcomed her with a toothless smile. Mama Areti, ah, my daughter has come. My bones have been waiting for your hands. Aduni, smiling faintly, and my heart has been waiting for your laughter, Mama. Aduni massaged the old woman's legs gently, applied warm cloths, and brewed bitter leaf tea. She listened as Mama Areti recited proverbs. Mama Areti, do you know, child, that a river that forgets its source will dry up? Never forget your roots, no matter where life carries you. Aduni nodded. She absorbed every word like thirsty soil drinks rain. These were the teachings she valued, words that balanced her mother's bitterness. Later that afternoon, as she carried folded clothes across the courtyard, she caught sight of Adewale again. He was speaking with his father, Chief Oladipo, a tall man with an air of authority. Their words were low, serious, matters of business perhaps, but Adewale's eyes briefly flickered toward her as she passed, not with arrogance, not with mockery, but with recognition. Aduni lowered her gaze quickly and quickened her steps, her cheeks burning. That evening at home, her mother noticed the color in her face. Morinike, suspiciously, what has made your cheeks glow like palm oil, child? Has someone spoken to you? Aduni, carefully, I only worked, Mama. Nothing more. Morinike, sternly, do not lie to me. Remember my story. Remember the wound wealth carved into my flesh. Rich men do not see us as people. They see us as toys. Keep your heart safe, Aduni. Aduni wanted to protest, to tell her mother that not every heart carried deceit. But she bit her tongue. To argue was to invite a storm of curses, and her mother's health was fragile. She bowed her head and whispered, Aduni, yes, Mama, I will remember. Days melted into weeks. Adewale's presence in the house became more visible. Sometimes he sat with his grandmother, reading old Yoruba poetry to her in a rich voice. Sometimes he held meetings with workers in the courtyard. Other times, he simply walked through the compound, greeting the staff politely. Aduni noticed how the other servants admired him in secret. The younger maids giggled when he passed. Some even whispered dreams of marrying him. But Adewale seemed uninterested. His eyes were sharp but distant, his manner kind but reserved. Except with her. Whenever Aduni served Mama Areti in his presence, Adewale would offer a nod, a word of thanks, or a comment on her diligence. Once, when he saw her carrying a heavy water pot, he called a guard to assist her. Another time, he sent Kunle, the driver, to deliver a pair of sturdy shoes to her quarters. Aduni was troubled. Gifts were dangerous. They could bind a poor girl like chains of silk. She returned the shoes politely, saying, Aduni, tell your master I thank him, but my feet are used to hardship. They will not know how to walk in fine shoes. Kunle chuckled, shaking his head. Kunle, you are a strange girl, Aduni. Most would dance for joy at such a gift. Aduni, better to walk barefoot in honesty than wear fine shoes in shame. Kunle carried the words back to Adewale, who only smiled quietly and said nothing. One evening, as the Harmattan wind swept through the compound, Adewale himself approached her in the courtyard. The almond tree overhead shed dry leaves that swirled like whispers in the air. Adewale, Aduni, may I speak with you? Aduni froze, clutching the tray in her hands. Aduni, yes, sir? Adewale, softly, I see how you work. With patience, with honesty. Not many do so these days. My grandmother praises you, and I see why. You carry dignity quietly, like a lantern in the dark. Aduni lowered her eyes, her voice barely audible. Aduni, I only do what I must. It is nothing. Adewale, it is not nothing. It is rare, and rare things are precious. Her heart thumped painfully in her chest. She wanted to reply but found no words. Instead, she bowed quickly and walked away. That night, she could not sleep. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, wealth is a mask. But Adewale's words echoed too. Rare things are precious. She tossed and turned, torn between fear and hope, between distrust and wonder. The gossip began soon after. Two young women from the city, Bisi and Tinny, often visited the Oladipo home. They were wealthy, well-dressed, and shameless in their pursuit of Adewale's attention. When they saw the way he sometimes glanced toward Aduni, their laughter grew sharp as knives. Bisi, mocking, have you noticed how the young master greets that maid? Perhaps he has lowered his eyes to the dust. Tinny, sneering, a maid cannot rise to sit among queens. Let her not dream. They whispered loudly enough for Aduni to hear. She kept her head bowed, her lips sealed, but inside, shame and confusion twisted her heart. That evening, she told her mother nothing. She simply sat quietly, grinding maize into flour, while Morenike coughed and muttered proverbs about pride and downfall. The days rolled forward, each filled with tension she could not name. She was careful never to linger when Adewale entered a room. She bowed quickly, completed her duties, and slipped away like smoke. Yet his presence haunted her. Mama Iredi, wise and watchful, saw everything. One morning, as Aduni adjusted the old woman's pillow, Mama Iredi placed a wrinkled hand over hers. Mama Iredi, child, do not fear the gaze of men, fear only the judgment of your spirit. If your spirit is clean, no man's eyes can stain you. Aduni bowed her head, tears stinging her eyes. She wanted to ask the old woman if wealth could truly be sincere, if love could come from a heart wrapped in silk, but the words lodged in her throat. Instead, she whispered, Aduni, thank you, Mama. Your words carry weight. As weeks turned into months, the seeds of destiny were quietly being planted. Aduni did not know it, but each step she took, each word she spoke, each act of dignity she performed was weaving her life toward a future she could not yet imagine. And in the shadows of the Oladipo mansion, under the watching eyes of ancestors, a story of love, mistrust, and truth had begun, one that would test not only her heart, but her very belief in the difference between poverty and wealth, between falsehood and sincerity. The mornings in Lagos carried a different kind of rhythm. Beyond the hum of the market women and the cry of roosters, the Oladipo mansion was alive with its own music. The shuffle of servants, the clang of pots in the kitchen, and the muffled sound of radio voices drifting through the halls. For Aduni, each day began with humility. She entered the house barefoot, her wrapper neatly tied, and her scarf pulled low over her hair. As custom demanded, she bent her knees slightly whenever she passed an elder. Her presence was quiet, yet those who paid attention could not help but notice the discipline she carried like a second skin. When she stepped into Mama Iredi's room that morning, the old woman was already awake. She sat propped up against her pillows, her eyes heavy but alert, watching the sun's first rays pierce the curtains, Mama Iriti, smiling faintly. My daughter has come. Ikaro, Aduni. Aduni, kneeling respectfully. Ikaro, Mama, may today bring you peace. Aduni began her duties, massaging the old woman's legs with warm shea butter, preparing bitter leaf tea, and adjusting her headscarf. Mama Ireti hummed softly, a tune from her youth, one that spoke of rivers and warriors. Mama Ireti, do you know what the song means, Aduni? It says, a child who listens to wisdom becomes the shade of her family tree. Remember that. Aduni, I will, Mama. Your words are seeds. I pray they grow in me. The bond between the two deepened daily. The old woman found comfort in Aduni's patience. Aduni, in turn, absorbed the wisdom that her own mother, hardened by bitterness, rarely offered. It was during these visits that Adewale began to appear more often. Sometimes he sat by his grandmother's side, listening quietly as Aduni read aloud from old Yoruba folk tales. Other times, he joined them in silence, watching the way Aduni's hands moved gently, the way her voice soothed like cool water. One afternoon, as the harmattan winds rattled the windows, Adewale entered carrying a wrapped parcel. He placed it on the table and gestured toward Aduni. Adewale, this is for you, a small token. Shoes strong enough for the long walk you take each day. Aduni froze, her hands trembling. Gifts from masters to servants were not unusual, but this felt different. She bowed her head and answered carefully. Aduni, sir, I am grateful, but my feet are used to hardship. They will not know how to walk in shoes of comfort. Adewale's lips curved slightly. Adewale, hardship should not be a companion forever. Even strong feet deserve rest. Still, Aduni shook her head. Aduni, better to walk barefoot in honesty than to wear fine shoes in shame. She returned the parcel with steady hands, though her heart beat wildly. Kunle, who had witnessed the exchange, later told Adewale with a chuckle. Kunle, Oga, that girl is not like the others. Most would dance in the street for such a gift. She fears even kindness. Adewale, quietly. Kindness that is forced becomes a chain. Let her choose her path. But whispers began to travel through the mansion. Bisi and Tenny, the wealthy visitors who often hovered like brightly colored birds, took note of Adewale's attentions. Their tongues dripped with malice. Bisi, mocking, do you see how our Adewale looks at the maid? Perhaps he has tired of queens and now wants to play in the dust. Teeny, snickering, let her not mistake a glance for a throne. Maids may polish gold, but they will never wear it. Their words were sharp, meant to cut, but Aduni remained silent. She had long learned that dignity was best protected by silence. At home, however, her silence was not safe. Moriniki noticed her unease and pressed her with questions. Moriniki, sternly, what burdens your spirit, child? Why do your eyes dart like a bird that has seen the hunter's net? Aduni hesitated, but spoke truthfully. Aduni, the young Master Z, he shows me kindness. He even offered gifts. I refused them, Mama, but I fear his gaze is not empty. Moriniki's face hardened. Moriniki bitterly. And what did I tell you? Rich men's kindness is poison served with honey. Today they smile, tomorrow they spit. Do not be fooled, Aduni. I will not see my daughter fall into the same pit that swallowed me. Her words struck like a whip. Aduni bowed her head, her heart torn. Yet Adewale's behavior only deepened. He did not flaunt his attention. He gave no grand gestures. Instead, he praised her work openly in front of the household staff, making it clear she was respected. Adewale, to the cook loudly, this soup tastes better today. But more than the taste, I value that my grandmother has peace, and that peace comes from Aduni's hands. We must not take her for granted." The staff, surprised, murmured their agreement. Aduni blushed deeply but said nothing. Respect in public was more valuable than gifts in private. Even Mama Areti noticed. One morning, she chuckled softly as Aduni adjusted her blanket. "Mama Areti, my grandson looks at you with eyes that carry more than gratitude. Do you not see it, child?" Aduni nearly dropped the cup in her hand. Aduni, "Mama, please. Such talk brings shame." Mama Ireti, smiling knowingly, "Shame? No, only truth. But truth must walk carefully. A flame can warm, but it can also burn." Days passed, and Adewale continued to draw near. One evening, he approached Aduni in the courtyard where the almond tree stood, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Adewale, "Aduni, may I ask you something?" Aduni, nervous, "Yes, sir." Adewale, "You work tirelessly. You care for my grandmother better than many trained nurses could. You show respect, yet you do not bow blindly. Tell me, what gives you such strength?" Aduni looked at him, her eyes wide. Aduni, "My strength? It is not mine. It comes from duty, from knowing that if I do not work, my mother does not eat. If I do not endure, she does not breathe. That is all." Adewale nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "Adewale, then your duty is noble, and noble duty deserves honor." Aduni bowed quickly, excused herself, and walked away, her heart pounding in her chest. As she walked home under the fading sunset, the words echoed in her mind. Noble duty deserves honor. She wondered what honor meant in the mouth of a man who had everything: wealth, name, power. She reached her home to find her mother waiting, her face etched with suspicion. Morinaiki, frowning, "You are late. Where were you?" Aduni, "I finished my duties, Mama. Nothing more." Morinaiki, "Do not let their perfume blind you. Remember, silk strangles softly. Promise me you will not forget." Aduni, quietly, "I promise, Mama." But inside, her heart was already divided between the warning of a wounded mother and the quiet kindness of a man whose eyes carried no mockery. The rains came suddenly one afternoon, drumming heavily on the corrugated zinc roofs of the compound. Servants scurried to pull laundry from the lines and cover the market baskets left in the courtyard. Aduni, caught in the downpour, rushed to Mama Ireti's quarters, her wrapper soaked through. She expected scolding for being late, but instead found Adewale standing by the window, watching the sheets of rain. Mama Ireti dozed softly on her mat, leaving them alone in the quiet room. Adewale turned when she entered, water dripping from her scarf. For a moment his eyes softened. "Adewale, you walked through this storm just to reach her?" Aduni, lowering her head, "My duty does not stop when the clouds open." Adewale, smiling faintly, "Still, it is rare. Many would have waited for the skies to clear." Aduni moved quickly to tend to Mama Ireti, refusing to meet his gaze again, yet her heart thudded like the rain on the roof. Later that week, Adewale arranged for new bedding for his grandmother: a thick mattress, imported sheets, and cushions embroidered with fine thread. The staff murmured in admiration, but it was Aduni who carried the old woman onto the new bed. Mama Ireti, with a sigh of relief, "Ah, this is soft like the clouds. Who brought this comfort to my old bones?" Aduni, hesitant, "Your grandson, Mama. He thinks of your comfort." Mama Ireti chuckled, "And perhaps of yours as well, child. Do not think I am blind. He asks daily of your work." Aduni flushed. Aduni. Mama, please. Such words shame me. Mama Ireti. There is no shame in being seen, only in being blind to the truth. But outside those quarters, tongues wagged louder. BC and Tenny returned one afternoon, trailing perfume and laughter. They sat in the parlor sipping palm wine, whispering loudly enough for servants to hear. BC, mocking, I hear our Adewale has taken interest in the caretaker girl. Imagine. From queens to dust. Tenny snickering. She must think herself special, but the maid's broom sweeps floors. It does not sweep hearts. Their words spread like wildfire through the compound. Some servants began to look at Aduni with envy, others with suspicion. Yet she remained silent, carrying her duties with the same steady dignity. At home, however, her silence betrayed her. Morinaki, ever watchful, questioned her again. Morinaki, sternly, Child, whispers reach even my ears. They say the young master's eyes follow you. Tell me, is this true? Aduni, defensive. I do nothing, Mama. I only work. Morinaki, bitterly. Work is a ladder, but men like him use it as a snare. Have you forgotten my story? Do not let the perfume of wealth blind you. Once the scent fades, only ashes remain. Aduni's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to say that Adewale was different, but her mother's story of betrayal, abandonment, and bitterness was a shadow she could not ignore. The tension grew heavier when Adewale, in front of the household, praised Aduni openly again. Adewale, firmly to the staff, my grandmother rests because of this girl's hands. We will treat her with respect. The servants nodded, but later in corners, some muttered, Cook, whispering, respect is a one thing, marriage is another. Let him not forget the distance between dust and throne. Aduni overheard once, her stomach twisting. She prayed silently. Aduni, inwardly, Olodumare, protect my name. Let no shame fall on my mother's house. Yet, despite the gossip, Adewale's actions remained gentle and measured. One evening, he approached her as she prepared herbs for Mama Ireti. Adewale, Aduni, do you eat before you walk home? Aduni, quietly, I eat when there is food at home. He frowned slightly, then instructed the cook to prepare a small parcel of food for her daily. Aduni protested, but Adewale raised a hand. Adewale, this is not charity. It is acknowledgement. You give us peace. We must not let you go hungry. Aduni accepted reluctantly, her heart conflicted. Was this kindness genuine, or was it the mask her mother always warned about? The gossip reached a boiling point during the annual family gathering. The Oladipo mansion filled with relatives, drummers, and dancers. Adir cloths in bright blues and reds decorated the courtyard. Amid the festivities, BC and Tenny whispered loudly as Aduni served drinks. BC, mocking, see how she bows so gracefully? Perhaps she rehearses for a wedding. Tenny, snickering, if a maid becomes mistress, then perhaps pigs will fly. Their laughter stung like thorns, but Aduni kept her face calm, her steps steady. Later that night, Mama Ireti noticed her silence and asked gently, Mama Ireti, why do you hide your voice tonight, child? Aduni, whispering, because my name is on the tongues of those who mock. They say I reach where I cannot. Mama Ireti, firmly, let them talk. A name is not dirtied by the mouth that spits it. It is dirtied only if you believe their spit is truth. Aduni's eyes filled with tears. She bowed her head in gratitude. Still, inside her, the battle raged. She wanted to believe that Adewale's kindness was different, that it came not from pride, but from sincerity. Yet her mother's voice was like a drumbeat. Wealth is a mask. Wealth is a trap. That night, as she walked home with her parcel of food, she looked up at the stars. The moon was a pale lantern in the sky. She whispered softly, Aduni, ancestors, if his heart is false, let my eyes be blind to him. But if his heart is true, give me strength to see it. The wind rustled through the palm trees, carrying her prayer into the night. And so the days of praise and perfume continued, days when kindness walked hand in hand with suspicion, when respect was a shield against gossip, and when the heart of a simple maid stood trembling on the edge of a truth she could not yet face. The courtyard of the Oladipo mansion was quiet that evening. Harmattan winds swept through the compound, carrying the dry scent of dust and the rustle of almond leaves. The sky was painted in strokes of orange and purple as the sun slid toward its rest. Aduni had just finished preparing Mama Aredi for bed. She stepped out into the courtyard, her wrapper neatly tied, her hands still smelling faintly of palm oil from the massage. She intended to leave quietly, as she always did, but under the great almond tree that spread its branches like a canopy of blessings and secrets, Adewale waited. He stood with his arms folded, his gaze fixed on the fading light. Aduni froze when she saw him. Her first instinct was to bow and pass quickly, yet his voice stopped her, steady and clear. Adewale, Aduni, will you walk with me a moment? Her heart leapt against her ribs. She hesitated, then nodded respectfully. They walked slowly under the tree, the dry leaves crunching under their feet. For a long time, Adewale said nothing. The silence was heavy, filled only by the chirping of evening crickets. Finally, he turned toward her. Adewale, you have been here many months. In that time, I have watched how you work, quietly, without complaint, with patience even when no one notices. You honor my grandmother, you honor this household, but more than that, you honor yourself. And I have come to honor you. Aduni's breath caught. She looked away, her fingers trembling at the edge of her wrapper. Aduni, sir, please, I do not understand. Adewale, firmly, yet gently, I am not a man who wastes words, Aduni. I will not circle around what my heart already knows. I have respect for you. I have admiration for you. And I wish to make you my wife. The words fell like thunder. Aduni felt the ground sway beneath her. She stared at him in disbelief, her lips parting but no sound escaping. For long moments, she simply stood frozen, the air thick between them. Her mother's voice echoed suddenly in her mind, sharp, bitter, unforgiving. Do not trust silk. Do not trust gold. Wealth is only a mask, hiding sorrow. Her hands clenched tightly. Her voice, when it came, shook with both fear and defiance. Aduni, no, I cannot. You mock me, sir. I'm a maid, the daughter of a poor widow. I clean floors and fetch water. Do you think my life is a game, that my heart is a toy? You have no right to jest with my dignity. Her words cut the air like a blade. For a heartbeat, she waited for anger, for laughter, for the arrogance she had been warned of all her life. But Adewale only looked at her, quiet, unreadable. Adewale, calmly, I do not jest, Aduni. My words are truth. But if your heart cannot accept them, I will not force you. He inclined his head slightly, turned, and walked away beneath the almond tree's shadow. Aduni stood trembling, her throat tight, her chest heavy. When he was gone, She sank to her knees on the dry leaves, her hands covering her face. She had spoken harshly, but her fear had been stronger than her hope. By morning, the news had spread like fire in Harmattan grass. Lagos society whispered, shouted, laughed. Adewale Oladipo proposed to a maid, and she refused him. The story grew wings, flying through markets, parlors, and courtyards. Bisi and Tenny were the loudest, their laughter carrying like drums. Bisi, mocking, "Did you hear? The maid thought herself a queen and turned down our Adewale. She seeks fame now, nothing more." Tenny, snickering, "Imagine the arrogance. A girl who washes old sheets claims she is too good for a lion's son. It must be witchcraft." In the markets, traders shook their heads. "Trader woman, a fool rejects a pot of gold when her own calabash is empty." Old man at the shrine, "She has spat on fortune. Such pride draws lightning." Even in her own neighborhood, whispers followed Aduni. Relatives and neighbors scolded her. "Neighbor woman, you threw away a chance women pray their whole lives for." "Are you cursed, girl?" Relative, "Your mother's house is crumbling, and you reject a man who could have raised you high? Shame will follow you now." The weight of their voices pressed on her like stones. At home, Morenike listened quietly as the neighbors' taunts reached her ears. When the door closed, she turned to her daughter. Morenike, with hard eyes, "You did well, Aduni. Better to cut a snake's head than let it coil around you. Let the world laugh. They do not know what I know. The rich bring only betrayal." Aduni bowed her head, but her heart was torn. She wanted her mother's approval, yet she also felt the sting of rejection, not of him, but of herself. She remembered the calm in Adewale's voice, the lack of anger when she refused, and that confused her more than anything. Why had he not mocked her? Why had he not retaliated? Why had he left quietly, with dignity? As days turned into weeks, the ridicule only grew. Bisi and Tenny delighted in humiliating her whenever they visited the mansion. Bisi, loudly within earshot, "Careful, Tenny. If you let this maid pour your drink, she might reject you too." Tenny, laughing, "Ah, yes. She rejects even lions. Who knows what she thinks she is? An Arisa's daughter?" Their laughter echoed in the halls. Aduni bore it silently, her face calm, her heart bleeding. The humiliation reached a point where she could no longer bear to enter the mansion. With her head bowed, she told Mama Ireti one evening, "Aduni, forgive me, Mama. I cannot continue here. My presence brings shame to your house. My work is no longer service. It has become a scandal. I must go." Mama Ireti tried to protest, but Aduni was firm. She gathered her small belongings and walked away, her steps heavy, her heart hollow. But leaving the mansion did not free her from torment. Everywhere she turned, people's eyes carried judgment. Some mocked her openly. Others whispered behind their hands. Even relatives who once praised her now scolded harshly. Relative, "You are a curse upon yourself, girl. Do you think heaven forgives such arrogance? You had the chance to climb, and you spat on it." Her only refuge was her mother's approval. Yet even that was sharp and cold, filled not with comfort but with her own bitterness. Morenike, "Yes, let them talk. Let them curse. I too was mocked when I walked away from lies. Better to be mocked than enslaved." Aduni nodded, but in her heart, sorrow grew heavy. For though she had refused Adewale with harsh words, she could not erase the memory of his calm eyes, his quiet dignity, and the strange gentleness in his silence. By the third sunrise after the refusal, the story had grown thorns. Aduni no longer walked to the Oladipo gates. She rose, prayed over her mother, and sat at the doorway, unsure where to place her feet. When she fetched water, neighbors stared. Children sang, "Queen of No! Queen of No!" until their mothers hushed them. She hunted small work, sweeping, washing, carrying baskets. Doors cracked, then closed. "Sister, forgive me," one woman said, palm already pushing the door. "My husband's cousin dines with Chief Oladipo." A tailor promised mending for coin, then whispered his aunt said Aduni would drag thunder on any house that hired her. By dusk, her legs shook, as if she had been climbing a hill that kept moving away. Morenike tried to braid pride into their days. "Let them keep their glitter," she said, coughing. "A clean no is better than a sweet lie." But medicines do not accept proverbs. Gary stretched thin. Pepper soup became pepper water. Aduni hid the worst, smiling as she cut palm oil with ash to coax color into a hollow pot. In salons, tongues danced. Some said Adewale had tested a greedy maid, and she failed by refusing. Others claimed she staged the refusal for fame. Between such lies, her name lay like a market mat, walked over by many feet. Inside the Oladipo house, a different quiet held. Adewale gathered the staff once, voice even. "There will be no mockery of Aduni here," he said. "My grandmother's comfort bears her name. Honor the comfort, honor the name." Bisi and Tani gossiped at the gate. Within the compound their laughter thinned. Kunle found Aduni at the public well, her wrapper damp, her eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. "Eka aro," he greeted. "Mama Areti misses the hands that do not spill water." Aduni's mouth trembled. "Tell her I pray for her," she said. "My feet cannot cross that courtyard." She tried roasting maize by the roadside. The first day a bent man bought 2 cobs and blessed her. The second, girls in headscarves smirked and left with the corn. On the third, rain flattened the coals. The maize soured. She gave the rest to a hungry boy and went home with the wet sleeves and a lighter soul. On the 7th day she turned toward the mansion, then away, like a needle unsure of north. At the gate she asked to see Mama Ireti. The old woman sat in a high-backed chair with a red-stitched shawl. Aduni knelt, forehead to the floor. "Mama," she said, "I left without farewell. Forgive me. If there is sweeping, washing, night watch, any task your house will not miss, let me do it. Pay me as you judge fit. My mother's breath depends on work." Something flashed in the old woman's eyes. Sorrow, pride, love, then settled into iron. "Child," said Mama Ireti, "you left to protect your name. Shall this house bargain it back with hunger? Go, before people say we trap the poor at our gate." The words were harsh to save her, not to cut her, but they cut anyway. Aduni touched her head to the floor and walked out. Back home, Morenike stared at the ceiling. "Did you beg?" she asked. "I asked," Adoni said. "They refused." 2 tears slid from Morenike's eyes. "The world is a hyena," she whispered. "It eats, and then pretends it never loved meat." They shared the last orange. The juice stung like truth and tasted like blessing. Morning carried no promise, weather only. Aduni rose, prayed, and was setting water to boil when a horn sounded. She stepped to the doorway and saw Kunle climb down from the Oladipo car. "Sister," he called, "forgive the hour. Mama Ireti sent me. She asked if you will come." Aduni stood still. Her mother, who had been pretending to sleep, lifted herself on her elbows. "Go," she said, surprising herself. "A house that calls you by name cannot be all hyena." Then, softer, "and a house that refuses you may be saving you." "But this sounds like a path cleared with broom." At the mansion, The guard's eyes widened, then softened. Inside, Mama Irati waited, with a face that became night and now held dawn. "Child," she said, as Aduni knelt, "I owe you an apology. Age makes the tongue quick and the judgment slow. Yesterday, my pride spoke. If your steps can find this floor again, let them. And if your hands will carry my pain the way calabashes carry water, carry it. Also, your wage will rise. That is not charity. It is respect." Aduni's heart rose and then steadied, like a bird that remembers flight. "Mama," she whispered, "I came for work, not mercy." The old woman smiled. "Sometimes work is mercy." Word drifted through the staff like warm air. In the kitchen, the cook nodded. The steward who had avoided her gaze now met it. Bisi and Tenny arrived and found their laughter dulled by the house's new weather. They drank and left. When Aduni reached home after that first day back, she brought bread and a whisper in her step. "They called me," she told Moreniki, "and paid me more." Moreniki stared a long time, jealousy and relief fighting until both fell away. "Then perhaps," she said, voice rough with surrender, "one rich man's house holds a window that is not a trap." She broke the bread. "Eat. Strength must return to your bones." Night folded around them. Through the window, the city hummed. Aduni lay awake, listening to her mother breathe. She remembered Adarvalu's command, Kunli's knock, the apology, the raise. Something inside her shifted like a door eased on its hinges. She did not know yet other doors were turning. Doors in hospitals, doors in hearts, doors in future that would ask for more courage than refusing a handsome man under an almond tree. For now, it was enough to sleep without shame and wake to work that mattered. Enough her name, which had been a mat, felt again like a path. The night was cool, with crickets singing outside the window. Moreniki lay awake, staring at the ceiling of their small clay house. The shadows of the past pressed heavy on her chest, and memories she had buried long ago rose like ghosts. Aduni, resting on a mat beside her, whispered softly, "Aduni, Mama, why do you hate them so much? Why do you see poison in every hand that offers help?" For a long moment, Moreniki was silent. Then her voice, rough and weary, filled the darkness. "Moreniki, because I have tasted the sweetness of honey that was filled with venom. And once you swallow such a thing, child, your tongue never forgets." She sighed deeply, and her words unfolded like an old griot telling a story by the fire. Many years earlier, Moreniki had been the jewel of her poor household. She was the daughter of a farmer and his weary wife, the fifth of 7 children. Their family lived in a village where meals were never enough, and laughter often hid hunger. Yet Moreniki's beauty was like a lamp lit in the night. Her skin glowed like polished bronze. Her eyes sparkled like the river under sunlight. Wherever she walked, men turned to look, and women whispered her name. But beauty in a poor house is both a blessing and a curse. Suitors came, but they brought nothing, only promises, only words. Moreniki's heart, restless and ambitious, wanted more than cassava fields and leaking roofs. She dreamed of silk, of jewelry, of feasts where food never ended. It was during those restless years that Femi Aluko entered her life. He was a wealthy trader's son, a man with rings on his fingers and perfume on his clothes. His carriages carried imported goods. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had never known hunger. When he saw Moreniki, he was struck by her beauty. He pursued her with gifts, fine wrappers, golden earrings, bags of rice, and tins of milk her family had never tasted before. Her parents warned her, "Father, child, do not trust wealth. A rich man's heart is slippery like oil. It cannot be held. Mother, stay with your kind. The poor know the poor's suffering. A rich man knows only his own shadow. But Morinike was stubborn. She saw the way her siblings' eyes widened at the tins of milk. She saw the way her friends envied her new earrings, and she told herself, "This is the life I deserve." Femi whispered sweet promises. "Femi, Morinike, I will build you a sky with no rain. You will never hunger again. Walk with me, and I will make you queen of my house." Against her family's pleas, Morinike married him. At first, it was paradise. The house Femi brought her to was larger than anything she had known. She slept on soft bedding, ate meat daily, wore clothes of silk. For a while, she believed the gods had favored her. But paradise is sometimes a mask for hell. Soon, she noticed Femi disappeared for days at a time. He returned with excuses: business, trade, journeys. He smelled of other women's perfumes. He grew impatient when she asked questions. Still, she clung to her comfort, convincing herself it was nothing. Then came the day she discovered she was with child. Her heart leapt with joy. She told Femi, expecting celebration. Instead, his face darkened. "Femi," coldly, "this is not what I wanted. Not now." Morinike, shocked. "But you are my husband. This child is our blessing." Femi, snapping. "No, Morinike, this child is your burden, not mine." He stormed out, leaving her shaking, clutching her belly in disbelief. Days turned into weeks. Femi's absences grew longer. One morning, strangers came to the house with papers. "Stranger, this property is no longer yours. Leave at once." Morinike's world collapsed. She begged, she cried, but the men were merciless. They threw her out with nothing but the clothes she wore. Her family, furious at her disobedience, closed their doors. "Father, we warned you. You chose wealth over wisdom. Now bear it." She found herself alone, pregnant, abandoned, and despised. When Aduni was born, Morinike looked at her child not with love, but with the bitter reminder of betrayal. Each cry, each small hand reaching for her, reminded her of Femi's broken promises. "Morinike," to herself, "this child is the fruit of my foolishness. This child carries the curse of wealth." She raised Aduni, but without tenderness. Her love was hardened by pain. Instead of lullabies, she gave warnings. Instead of comfort, she gave proverbs sharpened with anger. And so, Aduni grew up drinking not only her mother's milk, but also her mother's bitterness. Now, in the quiet of their small home, Morinike's voice cracked as she finished her tale. Morinike, whispering, "Do you understand now, Aduni? Do you see why I spit at silk? Why I cursed gold? Wealth betrayed me. A rich man destroyed my life. I will not watch you walk the same road. I would rather you live in hunger with dignity than dine in mansions built on lies." Aduni lay in silence, tears slipping down her cheeks. She finally understood the shadow that had haunted her mother all these years. Yet in her heart, another thought whispered, a thought she dared not speak. Not every man is Femi. Not every rich heart is rotten. She turned her face away, letting her mother's words echo in the darkness. But deep inside, she knew her own story was already weaving itself differently. Morinike's words lingered in the silence like smoke after a fire. Aduni lay still, but her mind painted the images her mother's story had left unfinished: the betrayal, the eviction, the loneliness. Yet Morinike was not done. Her voice pressed on, as if she needed to unburden wounds too long hidden. "Morinike," bitterly, "you think my story ended when Femi abandoned me? No, child, that was only the beginning of my torment." She coughed, her chest rattling, and continued. She. After being cast out of Femi's rented house, Mariniki wandered for days, her belly swelling with pregnancy, her pride stripped bare. The neighbors who once envied her new clothes now turned their faces away. Friends who once admired her jewelry whispered cruelly, "See the foolish girl. She thought herself a queen, and now she sleeps in the dust." Hungry and desperate, she returned to her family's compound. But her father barred the door. "Father," angrily, "you mocked our warnings. You said you would eat meat every day, wear silk, and live as a queen. Now you come crawling back, carrying a bastard child of wealth? Leave, Mariniki. There is no room here for arrogance clothed in rags." Her mother wept, but her father's word was law. The door was shut in her face, so she found shelter in a small abandoned hut at the edge of the village. There, with no midwife, no family, and no comfort, she gave birth to Aduni. The night of the birth was stormy. Rain hammered the thatched roof, lightning split the sky, and thunder shook the earth. Mariniki screamed into the darkness, her cries mingling with the storm. When at last the child slipped into the world, wailing with strong lungs, Mariniki collapsed in exhaustion. She looked at the tiny girl, her face wet with both rain and tears. Instead of joy, she felt a surge of resentment. Mariniki, whispering to herself, "You are the mark of my shame. You are the rope that tied me to betrayal. Femi's shadow lives in you." She did not curse the child aloud, but her heart hardened. From that day, love and bitterness wrestled inside her, and bitterness often won. Raising Aduni was a daily battle. Mariniki worked whatever job she could find, washing clothes for coins, carrying firewood, grinding pepper in the market. Her hands blistered, her back bent, but she survived. Yet every time she looked at her daughter, she saw the ghost of Femi. When Aduni cried for food, Mariniki would mutter, "Mariniki, cry all you want. Did your father not promise me skies without rain? Go and ask him for milk." When Aduni stumbled as a toddler, Mariniki scolded harshly instead of comforting. "Mariniki, stand. You must learn strength, for this world has no mercy." And when Aduni grew old enough to understand words, Mariniki filled her ears with warnings. "Mariniki, rich men are demons clothed in silk. They will smile, they will feed you sweet words, but behind their teeth are fangs. Promise me, child, you will never trust one. Promise me, or you will taste the same poison I did." Little Aduni, eager to please her mother, would nod with wide eyes. Aduni, softly, "I promise, Mama." Thus her childhood became a training ground of suspicion. Where other children heard bedtime tales of heroes and spirits, Aduni heard stories of betrayal and ruin. Where other mothers spoke of dreams, Mariniki spoke of warnings. Years passed. Aduni grew into a young woman, quiet and strong, but her heart was often heavy. She saw other mothers laughing with their daughters, brushing their hair, singing together. Her own mother rarely laughed. Her voice was sharp, her affection scarce. Yet beneath the hardness, there was a flicker of care. Mariniki worked herself half to death to provide food and clothes, however meager. She never abandoned Aduni, though she often spoke as though she resented her. Marinike, muttering while cooking thin soup, "If not for you, I would have walked away from this cursed life, but I cannot. Your breath ties me here." It was not love as Aduni imagined it, but it was the only love her mother knew how to give. Femi, meanwhile, vanished like smoke. Rumors reached the village that he had married a wealthy woman in the city, that he drank palm wine every night and threw lavish parties. Once, Mareniki heard he had a new child, dressed in gold chains before he could even walk. The news cut her deeper than knives. Mareniki, spitting bitterly, "Let him rot in his wealth. The gods will judge him, and if they do not, my curse will follow him." She never forgave him. Her hatred for him became the soil in which her distrust of all wealth grew. As Aduni entered her teenage years, suitors from the village sometimes approached, but Mareniki chased them away with sharp words. Mareniki, snapping, "Go back to your mothers. I will not hand my daughter to a hungry farmer who cannot even feed himself." Yet when wealthier men looked at Aduni with interest, Moreniki's fury grew even hotter. "Moreniki, do not dare. I will not let her taste poison twice. I will not bury my child in the same pit I fell into." Thus, Aduni grew between two fires, rejected from the poor, warned against the rich. Her only refuge was her own quiet dignity, the inner strength she cultivated through work, patience, and silence. Now, as Moreniki told her story in the present, her voice cracked with exhaustion. "Moreniki, softly, child, do you understand? You are the scar I carry, but also the breath I live for. I may have treated you with hardness, but it is because I fear the world will break you as it broke me. Never trust silk, Aduni. Never." Aduni wiped her tears silently. She understood her mother's pain now. She forgave her harshness. But in her heart, another seed was planted, the belief that perhaps her life need not be chained by her mother's curse. She thought of Adewale's calm eyes, his refusal to retaliate when she rejected him, his quiet respect. A whisper inside her grew louder. Perhaps not every rich man is Femi. Perhaps kindness can be true. But for now, she stayed silent, letting her mother's words settle like ashes in the night. The Harmattan winds grew harsher as the season deepened. Dust from the Sahara rolled through Lagos like a veil, covering roofs, roads, and throats. For weeks, Moreniki's cough had worsened, her breath growing shallow, her body weaker. One evening, as Aduni prepared thin pepper soup, she heard a thud. She rushed from the hearth to find her mother collapsed on the floor, her wrapper tangled around her legs. Aduni, panicked, "Mama, Mama, open your eyes!" Moreniki's lips trembled, but no words came. Her body shook violently. Neighbors rushed in when they heard Aduni's cries. With their help, she lifted her mother onto a borrowed cart, and together they hurried to the general hospital, dust swirling around them like restless spirits. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and old sweat. Patients crowded the hallways, mothers with crying babies, old men with weary eyes, youths clutching wounds. A doctor in a white coat approached, his face stern but kind. His name badge read Dr. Chukwuma. "Dr. Chukwuma, who is the daughter?" Aduni, breathless. "I am. Please save her." She fell suddenly. The doctor examined Moreniki quickly, then led Aduni aside. "Dr. East, Chukwuma," gravely, "your mother has developed a tumor in her brain. It has grown large, pressing against her nerves. Surgery must be done soon. Without it, she will not survive." Aduni's legs nearly gave way. She clutched the wall, her breath ragged. Aduni, whispering, "Surgery? But how much?" The doctor scribbled a figure on a paper and handed it to her. The numbers blurred through her tears. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life, more than her wages for 10 years. Aduni, pleading, "Sir Doctor, I have nothing, only a little savings." Is there no other way? Herbs? Smaller treatments? Dr. Chukwuma, shaking his head. Child, medicine cannot always wait for money. If you love her, find help quickly. Without surgery, days will decide her fate. He turned to tend to other patients, leaving Aduni trembling in the hallway. She returned to her mother's side. Moreniki was barely conscious, her eyes fluttering open. Moreniki, weakly, Child, why do you weep? Aduni, forcing a smile, It is nothing, Mama. You will be well. But inside, Aduni's heart crumbled. She left the ward, walking blindly into the night. Her feet carried her to the only place she thought might help, the Oladipo mansion. Mama Ireti was surprised to see her arrive so late. Her face streaked with tears. She motioned for Aduni to sit beside her. Mama Ireti, what troubles you, my daughter? Your eyes carry storms. Aduni clasped her hands together. Aduni, desperate. Mama, forgive me. I would never ask if it was not life or death. My mother. The doctors say she will die without surgery. The cost is more than I can ever dream of. Please, if you could lend me anything, I will work the rest of my life to repay you. The old woman's face softened, then grew heavy. She took Aduni's hands gently. Mama Ireti, child, if it were in my hands alone, I would give, but such money is not mine to command. Family matters are tangled. If I help you beyond my reach, others will accuse me of favoritism, even witchcraft. Forgive me, Aduni. I cannot give so much. Her words fell like stones on Aduni's heart. She bowed her head, her tears dropping onto the mat. Aduni, whispering, I understand, Mama. Forgive me for asking. She left the mansion silently, her shoulders bent beneath invisible weight. Back at the hospital, she found an empty bench near a window and sat there. Her mother's diagnosis echoing in her head. Around her, patients moaned, nurses hurried, children cried. She pressed her hands together and prayed aloud. Aduni, softly, Olodumare, hear me. Ancestors, see me. I have no silver, no gold. I have only tears. If her breath is taken, let mine go with it. If her life can be spared, let it be spared. Her voice cracked, and she wept openly. Nurse Ngozi, passing by, paused. She laid a gentle shawl over Aduni's shoulders. Nurse Ngozi, kindly, do not lose hope, child. The gods often send mercy in ways we do not see. A river may dry here, but it flows elsewhere. Aduni nodded weakly, unable to reply. Hours passed. The night deepened, and she dozed fitfully on the hard bench. At dawn, Dr. Chukwuma approached her with a puzzled expression. Dr. Chukwuma, Daughter, something strange has happened. The cashier has just informed me your mother's bills, the entire surgery cost, have been paid in full. Aduni blinked in disbelief. Aduni, stammering, Paid? But how? By whom? Dr. Chukwuma, shrugging. There was no name, only the money, counted and complete. Whoever did this wishes to remain unknown. All I can tell you is this. Your mother's surgery is scheduled for today. Aduni's hands flew to her mouth. Tears poured down her cheeks as she whispered, Aduni, who could do such a thing? The doctor smiled faintly. Dr. Chukwuma, sometimes mercy walks with feet we cannot see. Do not question too much. Give thanks and be ready. As the sun rose, the hospital buzzed with preparations. Moreniki was wheeled into the operating theater. Aduni held her hand until the last moment, whispering in her ear, Aduni, you will live, Mama. You must live. Someone has opened a door for us. Do not let it close." Then the door shut, leaving her alone in the corridor, clutching her shawl and weeping tears of both fear and gratitude. The minutes after the surgery began felt like years. Aduni sat on the hospital bench, her hands clutched tightly together, whispering prayers until her lips grew dry. She thought of her mother's warnings, of Femi's betrayal, of the bitter years they had lived, and then she thought of the nameless hand that had paid for the knife that might yet save her mother's life. Nurse Ngozi came by with a flask of water and pressed it into her hands. Nurse Ngozi gently, "Drink, child. A tree cannot stand without water, and a daughter cannot hope without strength." Aduni nodded, sipping slowly, her eyes never leaving the closed doors of the operating theater. Hours passed. Then at last, Dr. Chukwuma emerged, his gloves stained faintly, his eyes tired but calm. "Dr. Chukwuma, the surgery was successful, but the tumor is gone. She is weak, but she will live." Aduni gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. She dropped to her knees on the cold floor, whispering, "Thanks be to Olodumare. Thanks be to the ancestors." Nurse Ngozi helped her rise, smiling. "Nurse Ngozi, you prayed, and someone gave." The two together opened her road again. Morniki was wheeled out hours later, still unconscious but breathing steadily. Aduni walked beside the stretcher, clutching her mother's hand. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of peace. That night she remained by her mother's bedside, dozing in a chair. When dawn broke, Morenike stirred. Her eyes fluttered open weakly, and she looked at her daughter. "Morenike," hoarse whisper. "Child, am I in the land of the living, still?" Aduni, smiling through tears. "Yes, Mama, you're here. The doctors cut away the sickness. You will see many more sons." Morenike frowned slightly. "Morenike, but how? You had no money? Did the hospital take pity? Did you beg from the gods?" Aduni looked away. "Aduni, I do not know, Mama. When I woke, the bills were already paid. They said someone gave the money, but no name." Her mother's brow furrowed deeply, suspicion flaring even in weakness. "Morenike, then beware. Child, no gift comes without a rope tied to it. A hand that hides its face may mean to bind you later." Aduni pressed her mother's hand, trying to quiet her fears. "Aduni," softly. "Or perhaps, Mama, some mercies truly come from God. Perhaps not all men give with chains." Her mother turned her face away, unwilling to answer. But Aduni held to her thought like a seed of hope. Days passed. Morenike's strength slowly returned, though she tired quickly. Each day, Aduni thanked the nurses, thanked the doctors, and whispered silent gratitude to the unseen benefactor. She began to wonder who it might be. Was it a wealthy relative, pitying them in secret? Unlikely. Her relatives had scorned her too harshly. Was it Mama Eredi? But the old woman had already refused her openly. Her thoughts returned, again and again, to Adewale, but she quickly shook them away. Aduni, to herself, no, it cannot be him. He would not hide if he wished to help. He is too proud, too much above me. Yet in the quiet moments of night, when her mother slept and the ward was silent, the suspicion returned, bringing warmth to her chest. After a week, the doctors declared Morenike ready for discharge. Aduni signed the forms with trembling hands, still marveling that no bill was left for her to pay. Back home, neighbors gathered at their doorway, surprised to see Morenike walking slowly, supported by her daughter. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Neighbor woman, is this not the woman they said was at death's gate, Truly, her daughter's prayers are strong. Old man. Prayers? Yes, but also hidden pockets. Someone has lifted her with gold. The whisper stung Aduni, but she said nothing. That evening, as Moriniki rested, she questioned her daughter again. Moriniki, tell me truly, Aduni, whose hand paid for this? Was it the Oladipos? Was it that young man who once disgraced us all with his proposal? Aduni shook her head, though doubt fluttered inside her. Aduni, I do not know, Mama. They said no name, only that the money was complete. Mernike's eyes narrowed. Mernike, be careful. Kindness with no face is like cola without shell. You cannot know if it is sweet or bitter. But this time, Aduni did not bow completely to her mother's bitterness. She whispered softly, Aduni, still, Mama, we are alive because of it. I will thank even an unseen hand. Her mother did not reply. When Aduni returned to work at the mansion days later, Mama Iredi greeted her warmly, asking after Moriniki's health. Aduni, she is better, Mama. She breathes more freely now. By God's grace, she will see many more harvests. The old woman nodded, her eyes gleaming with something unspoken. Mama Iredi, good. The gods are kind. But remember, child, kindness sometimes wears a mask not to deceive, but to protect. Aduni frowned, puzzled. Aduni, I do not understand, Mama. Mama Ireti, smiling faintly. One day you will. The old woman's words lingered in Aduni's heart as she went about her duties. She began to notice how the household staff no longer mocked her openly. Their eyes, once sharp with gossip, now softened when they looked at her. Even Kunla, who rarely spoke, gave her a respectful nod. It was as though someone had silenced the whispers. Someone had commanded her name be spoken with respect. Again, her thoughts drifted toward Adewale. Could it be him? The memory of his calm voice under the almond tree returned to her, and her heart quivered. She dared not ask, dared not assume, but in her soul, she felt the stirrings of gratitude, for the first time, not weighed down by fear, but lightened by hope. That night, as she walked home under the pale moon, she whispered a prayer to the ancestors. Aduni, whoever you are, hidden giver, may the gods bless your house. You saved my mother's breath, and in doing so, you saved mine. The wind rustled through the palm trees, and though no answer came, she felt a warmth on her skin. Like unseen eyes watching with care, and deep in the mansion, in a quiet room, Adewale sat by his desk. He held a small folded receipt in his hands, the proof of payment for Morinike's surgery. He tucked it into a drawer and whispered to himself, Adewale, she need not know. Let her only have peace. The Oladipo mansion had returned to its usual rhythm. The clang of pots in the kitchen, the chatter of servants carrying baskets, the low hum of prayers at the family shrine. Yet for Aduni, every step felt different now. Since her mother's surgery, her heart carried both gratitude and restlessness. Gratitude, because her mother lived. Restlessness, because the hand that saved her still wore no face. One afternoon, Mama Iredi asked for her to remain after completing her duties. The old woman's voice was softer than usual, almost secretive. Mama Iredi, child, sit with me a while. My bones may be brittle, but my tongue still holds stories. Today, I have one for you. Aduni obeyed, settling cross-legged on the mat near the hearth, where a small fire burned. The flames licked gently at the wood, filling the room with warmth. Aduni, smiling faintly, what story is it, Mama? One of the ancestors? or a proverb to guide me?" The old woman's eyes glinted. "Mama Iriti, it is a story of the living, not of the ancestors, and it is a secret I have kept too long." Aduni frowned, puzzled. "Aduni, a secret?" Mama Iriti, nodding slowly. "Yes, but before I speak, you must promise me something. You will not run from it. Truth is heavy, and sometimes it crushes. Can your shoulders bear it?" Aduni hesitated, then bowed her head. "Aduni, I promise, Mama. Speak. My ears are ready." The old woman sighed deeply, leaning closer to the fire. "Mama Ireti, do you know why you returned to this house, Aduni? Do you think it was my decision?" Aduni blinked. "Aduni, yes, Mama. You said you forgave me for leaving, that your pride had spoken too harshly. You raised my wages. I thought it was your kindness." Mama Ireti shook her head slowly. "Mama Ireti, kindness I gave, yes, but the call for your return was not mine. It was my grandson, Adewale. He was the one who told me to bring you back. He was the one who ordered that your salary be raised. And he was the one who silenced every tongue in this house that sought to mock you." Aduni froze. The flames seemed to roar louder in her ears. Aduni, stammering, "Adewale? But why would he do that? After I refused him? After the whole city laughed at us both?" Mama Ireti, with a faint smile, "My grandson is a man of pride, yes, but he is also a man of honor. He told me, 'No one will speak ill of her under my roof. She is more than their whispers.' That was the first rope he tied to your name, not a rope of bondage, but of protection." Aduni's throat tightened. Her hands gripped her wrapper as if to steady herself. "Aduni, I did not know." Mama Ireti's eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. "Mama Ireti, and there is more. Do you remember the day you came here, tears in your eyes, begging for money for your mother's surgery? I told you I could not give. I spoke the truth, but only half of it. My grandson saw you leave. He saw you walking down the road, your shoulders bent like broken branches. And that night, he went to the hospital quietly. It was he who paid every naira for your mother's surgery. It was he who kept your name safe from death." The word struck Aduni like a drumbeat in her chest. She gasped, her eyes filling with tears. Aduni, whispering, "Him? Was it him? All this time?" Mama Ireti, nodding. "Yes, child. He did not want you to know. He said, 'Let her think it is a mercy from God. Let her not feel she owes me.' But my heart says you must know, for gratitude unspoken is a bird caged. It must be set free." Aduni covered her face with trembling hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks, hot and relentless. Aduni sobbing, "And I judged him wrongly. I thought his kindness was mockery. I thought he sought only to play with me. I refused him with harsh words, and yet he saved us. He saved my mother's breath." Mama Ireti reached out, her wrinkled hand resting gently on Aduni's shoulder. "Mama Ireti, child, do not drown in regret. The heart protects itself the only way it knows. You carried your mother's wounds in your chest, but now, perhaps, you will see with your own eyes, not hers. Not every rich man is Femi. Some are still sons of honor." Aduni wept openly, her tears falling into the dust. She whispered between sobs, "Aduni, I was blind, Mama, blind and foolish. And yet, he gave without asking. He helped without pride. How do I face him now?" Mama Ireti, smiling faintly, "Face him with truth. Speak as your spirit leads. He is not a man who needs flattery. He needs only honesty, as you gave him the day you refused him." The fire crackled, sparks leaping upward. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rhythm of Aduni's tears and the steady breathing of the old woman who had chosen to reveal what her grandson wanted hidden. At last, Aduni wiped her face, her resolve strengthening like iron being forged. Aduni, softly but firmly, I must tell my mother. She must know her life was saved by the man she cursed. Perhaps then her heart will soften. Perhaps then she will see that not all wealth brings chains. Mama Areti nodded slowly. Mama Areti, yes, go, tell her. But remember, child, the truth is a kola nut. It is bitter at first, but sweet when chewed fully. Do not fear the bitterness. Aduni rose, bowed deeply, and left the hearth with her heart heavy but alive with new light. That night, Aduni walked home with her feet heavy but her spirit restless. The streets were quiet, children asleep and lamps flickering in clay windows. She carried Mama Ireti's words like a pot balanced on her head, fragile, precious, impossible to put down. When she entered their small house, she found Moreniki sitting upright, wrapped in her faded wrapper, staring at the doorway as if waiting. Moreniki, suspiciously, where have you been, child? You left before sunset. Have you been wandering? Aduni knelt before her mother, tears already burning in her eyes. Aduni, softly, Mama, I must tell you something I only learned today. Please, hear me before anger blinds you. Moreniki frowned, but she nodded stiffly. Moreniki, speak then. My ears are open, though my heart is wary. Aduni took a deep breath, her voice trembling. Aduni, Mama, the truth is this. The one who paid for your surgery, the one who saved your life, it was Adewale Oladipo. Moreniki's body stiffened. Her eyes widened with shock, then narrowed with suspicion. Moreniki, snapping, No, you lie to trick me. You let him poison your mind. You want me to believe he is a saint when he is like all the rest. Aduni shook her head, tears spilling freely. Aduni, it is no lie, Mama. Mama Areti herself told me. She said it was Adewale who called me back to the mansion when I was cast out. He silenced the tongues that mocked me. He raised my wages. And when you were at death's door, he followed me to the hospital. He paid every naira of your bills without asking for thanks. He even begged his grandmother not to tell me. He wanted no glory, Mama, only that you should live. Silence filled the room. The crackle of the oil lamp was the only sound. Moreniki's lips parted, but no words came. Aduni pressed on, her voice breaking. Aduni, Mama, all my life you warned me. You said the rich only mock us, only use us. I believed you. I rejected him because your scars became my own. But Mama, not all men are Femi. Adewale is not Femi. He is different. And you live today because of him. Moreniki's hands trembled in her lap. For the first time in years, her eyes softened, not with anger, but with confusion, with pain, with the beginning of release. Moreniki, hoarse whisper, different? Can it be? After so many wounds, can there truly be one who gives without taking? Aduni reached forward, clutching her mother's hands. Aduni, pleading, Yes, Mama, look at me. I have seen him. I have spoken with him. When I refused him harshly, he did not curse me. He did not mock me. He left quietly, with dignity. And now he has given us life. If you cannot believe me, believe your own breath. You are alive because of him. Moreniki's eyes brimmed with tears. For the first time, her bitterness cracked, revealing the hurt child she had once been. She thought of Femi's false promises, his cold rejection, his betrayal. Then she thought of Adewale, who had asked for nothing, who had saved without fanfare, who had hidden even his own goodness. Her chest shuddered with sobs. Moreniki, weeping. All these years, I carried hatred like a baby on my back. I poured it on you, my child. I cursed silk. I cursed gold. I cursed every smile of the wealthy. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only poisoning your spirit. And yet, you endured me. You never left me. Even when my tongue cut you, you stayed. Aduni's tears flowed freely. She threw her arms around her mother, holding her tightly. Aduni, sobbing, Mama, I stayed because I love you. I stayed because you are my mother. I knew your pain, even when you hid it in anger, and now we have another chance. We must not waste it. For the first time in her life, Morenike embraced her daughter with warmth. Her arms, which had once been stiff with bitterness, now wrapped gently, tremblingly, around Aduni. Morenike, whispering, Forgive me, my child. Forgive the mother who turned her wounds into your chains. Forgive the love that came as thorns instead of flowers. Aduni, through tears, There is nothing to forgive, Mama. You did what you knew, and now we can heal together. They clung to each other, their tears mingling, their hearts mending. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, carrying away years of bitterness like ashes into the night. Later, as they lay side by side, Morenike spoke again, her voice softer than Aduni had ever heard. Morenike, tomorrow, child, you must go to him. Go to Adewale. Tell him you know the truth. Tell him you are grateful. And if your heart feels it, ask his forgiveness for your harsh words. A man who gives like that deserves at least truth in return. Aduni nodded, her heart pounding. Aduni, whispering, Yes, Mama, I will go. Morenike smiled faintly, closing her eyes. Morenike, for the first time in many years I feel light. Perhaps the gods did not curse me after all. Perhaps they saved me through him, and through you. Aduni lay awake long after her mother slept, staring at the thatched roof. Her heart was full of relief, of gratitude, of nervous anticipation. Tomorrow she would face Adewale. Tomorrow she would speak truth at last. For now, she let sleep carry her, her mother's arms still wrapped loosely around her, the first true embrace of love she had known. The morning sun filtered through the dusty air, painting golden streaks across the clay walls of their small home. Aduni rose before her mother, tying her wrapper carefully and smoothing her scarf. Her hands trembled as she worked. Morenike, waking with a cough, turned her head and studied her daughter. Morenike, softly, Your steps are heavy with fear, child. Remember, water flows best when it does not fight its path. Speak to him as water speaks to stone, gentle, but strong enough to change it. Aduni nodded, her heart thudding. She kissed her mother's forehead and set out for the Oladipo mansion. The compound was alive with its usual bustle. Servants swept the courtyard, drivers polished cars, and the cook scolded a boy for dropping firewood. But for Aduni, everything blurred. She moved like one walking into battle, her spirit both trembling and determined. When she reached Mama Iredi's quarters, the old woman was resting, her eyes half closed. She smiled faintly when she saw Aduni. Mama Iredi, Ah, child, you have come early. Your hands are eager today. Aduni knelt respectfully. Aduni, Mama, where is Adewale? I must speak with him. The old woman's eyes twinkled knowingly. Mama Iredi, he is in the garden. Go. But remember, truth spoken with humility carries more weight than pride shouted from rooftops. Aduni bowed and rose, her heart racing.
She found Adewale under the shade of the almond tree. the very place where months earlier he had spoken words that had shaken her life. He was dressed in a simple white tunic today, not the embroidered agbada of wealth. He stood with his back to her,
studying a book of Yoruba poetry in his hands. For a moment, Aduni hesitated, her feet rooted to the ground. Memories of her harsh refusal came flooding back. Her accusing words, her anger, her disbelief. She almost turned to flee. But then her mother's voice echoed in her heart. Water flows best when it does not fight its path. She stepped forward slowly. Aduni, softly. Adewale. He turned at once. His eyes widened slightly in surprise, then softened. Adewale, Aduni, you rarely call me by name. What brings you here? Her throat tightened. She bowed her head, unable to meet his gaze. Aduni, voice trembling. I have come to say what I should have said long ago. Forgive me. Forgive my harsh words. Forgive the way I judged you by my mother's wounds, not by your own heart. I thought your kindness was mockery. I thought your gifts were chains. I thought your proposal was a game. But now I know the truth. I know what you did for my mother. I know it was you who paid for her life. Adewale was silent for a long moment. The wind rustled the almond leaves above them, scattering dry pods to the ground. At last he spoke, his voice calm but laced with something deeper, something tender. Adewale, you were not wrong to doubt, Aduni. The world has given you reason to fear. I knew your eyes carried scars that were not your own. That is why I asked for nothing when I gave. If you had never learned the truth, I would still have found peace in your mother's breath. Aduni's tears fell freely now. She lifted her head, her eyes shining. Aduni, but I hurt you. I humiliated you before all. And still, you gave. Why? Why would you do so much for one who spat on your honor? Adewale closed the book in his hands and looked at her with quiet intensity. Adewale, because I saw you, Aduni, not a maid, not a poor girl, not a shadow of your mother's pain. I saw you, your dignity, your patience, your honesty. From the first day I spoke your name, I knew you carried something rare, something I could not mock, even if I wished to. I asked you to be my wife, not from pity, but from truth. And though you refused, that truth did not change. Her heart quivered. She dropped to her knees before him, her voice breaking. Aduni, then hear me now, Adewale. I misjudged you. I chained your name to my mother's curse. For that, I beg forgiveness. If you can still look at me with honor, I will never again doubt the truth of your heart. Adewale stepped forward quickly, lifting her gently to her feet. His hands were firm, steady. Adewale, gently, Aduni, do not kneel to me. You owe me nothing. If there is forgiveness, it is already given. If there is gratitude, I have already felt it in your honesty. Stand beside me, not beneath me. Aduni looked into his eyes then, truly looked. And for the first time, she saw no mask, no pride, no hidden hook. Only sincerity, only truth. Her voice steadied. Aduni, softly, then let me stand beside you, Adewale, if you will still have me. Adewale's lips curved into a slow smile. Adewale, I asked once, and your answer was no. Today, I ask again, not as a master to a servant, but as a man to a woman. Will you walk with me, Aduni? Will you let me carry your burdens as you have carried others? Her heart leapt. For a moment, silence held them both. Then she whispered, Aduni. Yes. The almond tree above them swayed as if in blessing. Unbeknownst to them, Kunlo the driver watched from a distance, smiling to himself. He muttered under his breath, Kunle? Chuckling, Ah, finally! Even the hardest stone yields to water. And in the house, Mama Ireti, though too far to hear, felt a quiet peace settle in her chest. For days after that morning beneath the almond tree, Aduni walked with a new light in her step. Though her duties remained the same, massaging Mama Ireti's legs, carrying trays of food, sweeping corridors, her spirit was no longer bowed under suspicion or shame. She and Atwala did not flaunt their bond. They did not whisper in corners or exchange glances meant to be seen. Instead, their understanding grew quietly, like a seed sprouting beneath the soil, unseen yet certain. When they passed each other in the courtyard, he greeted her with respect, always by name. When she served at his grandmother's side, he spoke to her not as a servant, but as an equal voice in the room. The staff noticed the change, though Adwala never made grand gestures. His dignity carried enough weight that no one dared mock. One afternoon, Kunle leaned against the gate, speaking to the cook. Kunle, grinning, "You see the way our Oga greets her? He says her name like it is music. Not even silk gets such honor." The cook chuckled, nodding. "Cook, it is good. She deserves it. Her hands bring peace, even to this house of plenty." But not everyone was pleased. When Basi and Tenny next arrived, their laughter carried venom. Bisi loudly, "Look, Tenny, the maid still sweeps the floor, yet now she thinks herself a queen." Tenny snickering, "Ah, but queens wear crowns, not headscarves. Let us see how long this fantasy lasts." Their words rang sharp, but this time the staff did not echo their laughter. Even they had begun to see that Aduni's dignity was not dust to be mocked. Adewale, overhearing from a distance, approached calmly. His voice carried quiet authority. Adiwala, firmly, "Enough. In this house, respect is not bought by silk or birth. It is earned by the character of one's hands. If your tongues cannot honor that, keep them silent." The room fell quiet. Bisi and Tenny flushed, their pride wounded. They excused themselves soon after, their footsteps brisk with humiliation. Adunni, who had overheard, lowered her head, her heart thudding with gratitude. She said nothing, but her smile returned when no one was watching. At home, Mariniki saw the change in her daughter. She noticed how Aduni hummed as she cooked, how her eyes shone even after long hours of work. One evening, as they shared a bowl of yam porridge, she asked softly, "Mariniki, child, what has shifted your spirit? You walk as though a heavy stone has been lifted from your back." Aduni hesitated, then met her mother's eyes with quiet courage. "Aduni, Mama, I spoke to him, to Adewale. I told him the truth of my heart. I asked forgiveness for my harshness, and he gave it freely. I have chosen to walk beside him." Mariniki froze, her spoon trembling in her hand. The porridge dripped back into the bowl. For a long moment she said nothing. Then her lips pressed into a thin line. Mariniki, hoarse, "And he accepted? After all? After your refusal before the world?" Aduni, nodding, "Yes, Mama. He said his truth did not change. And now we walk together." Mariniki turned her face away, staring at the wall. Memories of Femi's betrayal stormed inside her. But then she remembered the night her daughter had revealed the secret, that Adewale was the one who had saved her life. Slowly, painfully, her resistance began to bend. She spoke at last, her voice softer than Aduni had ever heard. "Mariniki, child, if he truly carries honor, then perhaps the gods are giving me a chance to see what I never believed. I will not curse this bond, but promise me one thing. Walk carefully. Even sweet water can drown if taken too quickly." Aduni clasped her mother's hand, tears glistening. "Aduni, I promise, Mama. I will walk with care, but I will walk. Days turned into weeks, and the news began to ripple beyond the mansion. Rumors spread, first whispers, then louder voices. The maid walks with the lion's son. They say Adewale defends her as though she were already his wife. Perhaps love is not chained by wealth after all. Some scoffed, others marveled. In the markets, women debated fiercely. Market woman A. She is wise. To catch the heart of such a man with only her honesty, that is true wealth. Market woman B. Snapping. Or foolish. Does she not know that high trees fall hardest? But the voices of scorn grew weaker than before, for Adewale's actions spoke louder. He no longer hid his regard. At family gatherings, he made space for Aduni to serve at his side without shame. He introduced her by name, not as the maid, but as Aduni, the one who cares for our grandmother. Even Chief Oladipo, though at first silent, began to nod approvingly when he saw her quiet devotion. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Adewale walked with Aduni through the garden. The air was filled with the scent of hibiscus and the sound of distant drumming from a neighboring compound. Adewale, do you fear their voices still, Aduni? The laughter, the whispers? She shook her head slowly, her eyes steady. Aduni, I feared them once, because I feared myself. I thought I was dust, unworthy of even their scorn. But now I see that dignity is not given by tongues. It is carried within. Your respect has shown me that. My mother's change has confirmed it. No, Adewale, I do not fear them any more. He smiled, his gaze warm. Adewale, then let them speak. Let the world chatter. We will answer with our lives, not our words. She looked at him then, and her heart swelled with a peace she had never known. For the first time, love did not feel like a trap. It felt like water, gentle, flowing, patient, yet strong enough to shape even stone. That night, Aduni returned home. Moriniki was waiting, seated by the doorway, her face unreadable. Moriniki, well, did you walk with him again today? Aduni blushed faintly, but nodded. Aduni, yes, Mama. We spoke of many things. He honors me truly, not with gifts, not with boasts, but with his eyes and his words. Moriniki studied her for a long time, then sighed deeply. Moriniki, quietly, then perhaps my curses are lifting at last. Perhaps I judged all men by the face of one demon. If this Adewale is different, then let him prove it not only with coins, but with time. If he endures, then I will bless him. And if he falters, may the ancestors judge him swiftly. Aduni knelt before her mother, clasping her hands. Aduni, whispering, Thank you, Mama. Your blessing means more to me than all the world's treasures. And for the first time, Moriniki placed her hand gently on her daughter's head, not in anger, not in warning, but in blessing. Moriniki, walk carefully, child. Walk with dignity. If water is pure, even kings must drink it. The seasons shifted, and with them the winds of fate. Where once Aduni's name had been whispered with mockery, now it was spoken with respect, even awe. The girl who had walked barefoot through Lagos dust was now the woman who walked beside Adewale Oladipo, not as servant, not as shadow, but as equal. Still, tongues wagged, as tongues always do. Some muttered, Neighbor woman, can a maid truly become a mistress? Dust cannot turn to gold. But others replied, Old market seller, then you have not seen the gods at work. Sometimes gold hides in the dust until it is polished by suffering. When Adewale finally spoke to his father, Chief Oladipo, about his decision, the elder man was silent for a long moment. He sat on his carved wooden chair, tapping his staff lightly against the tiled floor. Chief Oladipo, many women of status, wealth, and education have sought your hand, my son. Yet you choose this one, a maid, a daughter of poverty. Tell me why. Adewale met his father's gaze without flinching. Adewale, because she carries dignity, Baba, because her hands know labor, yet her spirit knows honor. Because she stood against me when she thought I mocked her, even though the world mocked her in return. If a woman has such strength, what throne can she not uphold? What family can she not honor? The chief studied his son, then leaned back, a slow smile tugging at his lips. Chief Oladipo, you speak with your grandfather's tongue. He too chose a woman not for her name, but for her heart, and it brought blessings to our house. If this is your path, Adewale, then it is mine also. The Oladipo house does not fear gossip. Let the world chatter. Our ancestors will judge by truth, not by noise. Thus the father gave his blessing. Parts. The wedding preparations began soon after. Lagos buzzed with anticipation. Tailors cut a deer cloth in shades of royal blue and deep gold. Drummers rehearsed rhythms that would make even the stiffest feet dance. Women wove baskets of kola nut, palm wine, and yams for the traditional rites. Yet, amid the grandeur, Adewale insisted one thing. Adewale, let no display overshadow her. This union is not to prove our wealth, but to honor her dignity. So though the feast was rich, it carried simplicity. The wedding would take place in the courtyard, under the same almond tree where their journey had begun. On the day of the union, the compound overflowed with people. Relatives in flowing agbada, neighbors in bright headscarves, children with eager eyes. The drums thundered, flutes sang, and the air smelled of jollof rice, fried plantain, and spicy pepper soup. Aduni stood in her small home, trembling, as women dressed her in a wrapper of white and blue, her head wrapped in jeel that shimmered like dawn. Her mother, Morenike, stood beside her, tears streaming freely. Morenike, whispering, "My child, forgive the mother who once chained you with her bitterness. Today you break my chains. Today you show me that ashes can indeed birth gold." Aduni embraced her, their foreheads touching. Aduni, softly, "Mama, without your pain, I would not know strength. Without your warnings, I would not see truth. Today is yours as much as mine." Together, they stepped out into the sunlight. The ceremony began with the elders offering prayers to the ancestors. Kola nuts were broken, palm wine poured, blessings invoked. Drummers beat rhythms that shook the ground, and dancers whirled in colorful garments. At last, Adewale and Aduni stood beneath the almond tree facing each other. The family elder raised his staff. Elder, Adewale Oladipo, son of Chief Oladipo, do you take this woman not for her hands alone, not for her beauty alone, but for her spirit, which has endured storms? Adewale, firmly, I do, elder. Aduni Morenike's daughter, once called maid, now called bride, do you take this man not for his wealth alone, not for his name alone, but for his heart, which has given without demand? Aduni's voice trembled, but it rang clear. Aduni, I do. The drums roared, the crowd cheered, and the almond tree shed a gentle rain of leaves as though blessing them. Yet the moment most etched in every heart was when Morenike, once bitter and hardened, stepped forward. Her wrapper was simple, but her eyes shone with pride and humility. She raised her hands, trembling, and placed them over her daughter's and Adewale's joined hands. Morenike, voice breaking, "Once I cursed wealth. Once I cursed men. Once I cursed even my own child. But today I am blessed. I bless this union. I bless the man who gave me back my breath. I bless the daughter who gave me back my heart. May the gods water your path. May no betrayal ever find your door." The crowd murmured with awe. Tears ran down faces, old and young alike, for all knew that the fiercest storms often give birth to the clearest skies. That night, as the feast filled the air with music and laughter, Aduni and Adewale sat side by side beneath the almond tree. The drums thundered, children danced, and joy overflowed. But the two of them sat in quiet peace, their hands entwined. Aduni, smiling softly, "Do you remember, Adewale? It was here you first asked me, and here I broke your heart." Adewale, chuckling, "And here you healed it again. Perhaps this tree was always meant to be our witness." They looked up at the branches stretching into the starry sky, and for the first time, Aduni felt no fear of wealth, no shame of poverty, only peace. And the days after the wedding glowed with joy. Guests lingered in Lagos, retelling the union as though it were a folk tale already. Market woman, the maid who became a bride. Ah, truly the gods write stories even the griots envy. Old man at the shrine, not by witchcraft, not by greed, by dignity, by patience, this tale will be sung. And so, Aduni's name, once mocked in whispers, now rose in praise. Life in the Oladipo household shifted. Aduni did not suddenly stop working with her hands. She continued to care for Mama Iridi, to stir soup, to fetch water. But now, when she entered a room, no one called her maid. They called her wife. They called her daughter of the house. At first, she felt awkward in the fine fabrics gifted to her feet uneasy in golden sandals. But Adewale laughed gently when he saw her fidget. Adewale, teasing, "Why do you pull at your geel as if it were a chain? Wear it like you wear your dignity, naturally, without shame." And slowly, Aduni learned to carry both wealth and humility, not as enemies, but as companions. Morenike, too, was transformed. No longer hunched with bitterness, she began to sit straighter, to smile more often. Her illness had scarred her, but her daughter's joy became medicine stronger than herbs. She lived now in the Oladipo compound, at her daughter's side. Servants who once sneered now bowed to her respectfully, calling her Iya Oko Adewale, mother-in-law of Adewale. At first, she resisted, muttering under her breath, "Morenike, do not bow to me. I am still the woman who once begged bread." But Adewale himself would smile and reply, "Adewale, even a woman who once begged bread can become the pillar of a family. Respect is not erased by hunger." Slowly, her heart softened. One evening, as the family gathered in the courtyard, Morenike rose to speak. The moon hung above them, bright and round, and the almond tree swayed in the night wind. Morenike, with steady voice, "My people, hear me. Once, I cursed wealth because one man betrayed me. I poured my bitterness upon my daughter, chaining her with my wounds. But today, I confess before all, I was wrong. Not all men are femi. Not all wealth is poison. This house has shown me that honor can wear silk as well as rags. I bless my daughter's union, and I bless this family that gave us life." The crowd murmured with respect, and Mama Iridi, her voice weak but proud, lifted her hands. "Mama Iridi, let it be written in memory. Bitterness can turn to blessing, and ashes can indeed give birth to gold. Months passed, and Aduni's role as Adewale's wife blossomed. She hosted gatherings, welcomed guests, but never forgot her roots. She still rose early to fetch water, still swept her own corner of the courtyard, still offered prayers at the shrine with humility. When people asked why she continued such tasks, she answered simply, Aduni, hands that know work do not forget. Riches may clothe me, but dignity still lives in labor. Her humility inspired others. Women in the market told their daughters, Market woman, learn from Aduni. Beauty fades, wealth shifts, but character endures. Children were born into their union, 2 sons and a daughter. Adewale named the first son Oluwadare, meaning God has vindicated, for he believed their love had silenced every mocker. Aduni named their daughter Ifedayo, meaning love has become joy. Morenike, holding her grandchild for the first time, wept openly. Morenike, sobbing, My curses are gone. My eyes have seen joy. May these children never carry bitterness in their bones as I did. And for the first time, she became not only a mother, but a grandmother who poured blessings instead of warnings. Years later, storytellers would sit by firesides and recount the tale. Griot's voice, There was once a maid named Aduni, who walked with patience though her feet were bare. A wealthy man saw her, not as dust, but as diamond. She refused him once, for the scars of her mother clouded her eyes. But when truth was revealed, she embraced him, and together they built a life where ashes kissed gold. Their union became a lesson. Dignity is wealth, kindness is power, and true love flows like water, gentle, patient, but stronger than stone. Children listening would widen their eyes, asking, Is it true? And the griot would nod. Griot, true enough that Lagos still whispers her name, true enough that under the almond tree, lovers still vow with courage. One quiet night, long after the wedding songs had faded into memory, Aduni sat beneath the almond tree with Adewale. The stars stretched above them like a woven cloth of light. Aduni, softly, do you ever wonder why the gods chose us, me from ashes, you from gold? Adewale took her hand gently. Adewale, perhaps to show the world that gold without humility is worthless, and ashes without hope are wasted. Together, we are proof that both can shine. Aduni leaned her head on his shoulder, her heart full. Aduni, then let us always shine. Not with wealth, not with power, but with love that honors. And there, under the tree that had witnessed their pain, their refusal, their truth, and their union, they sat in peace. The winds carried their laughter. The ancestors smiled, and the tale of Aduni the maid and Adewale, the lion's son, became a story for generations, a story not of riches, but of dignity, of forgiveness, and of love stronger than bitterness. This was today's tale from African Tales by Sanan, a story of pain, love, and destiny. If it touched your heart, let us know in the comments, and remember to like, share, and subscribe, because tomorrow, another African tale awaits you. She was just a poor African maid struggling to survive, caring for her sick mother with nothing but hard work and hope. But when a wealthy millionaire unexpectedly proposed to her, she rejected him, believing his love was a cruel joke. What she never knew was that behind the silence, he carried a secret that would change her life forever. This emotional African story is filled with love, betrayal, sacrifice, and redemption. From a mother's painful past to a daughter's courage, and from society's cruel judgment to the triumph of true dignity, this tale will keep you on the edge of your seat till the very end. Tell us in the comments where and when you're watching from. We'd love to know our family of listeners around the world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to African Tales by Sanan for more powerful African love stories, emotional dramas, and suspenseful tales that inspire and touch the heart.